remember about yourself and your game this season?
Um, I feel like it's been a long journey for me this season. There's been times where I played you know 8 to 10 minutes, and then I was getting DMPs, and now I'm having a kind of a major role in this team. So as the season has progressed, I just know that I have a real um, like niche in this league, and that's shooting the ball. So just making sure I'm in position, and making sure that is my like that's gonna be the constant for me throughout my career, and it's something that um, I'm confident in, and I feel like whether it's I don't want to say whether it's this team or any team, but everybody needs shooting. So I just stay constant in that, and I think for my future, just develop it into a two-way a player, playing both sides of the ball and getting stops, being solid and stuff like that. So I think I've proved to myself and the coaches that I can be a real piece, and just got to keep building on that.
Is that confidence something you had at the beginning of the year, or did that kind of climb during the course of the season?
Yeah, I definitely climbed. I think you know first and foremost, I get all my confidence from Jesus Christ, but the coaches instilled a lot of you know words of encouragement and clarification for me throughout the season, and what I've done and what I've gotten better at. So that helps a lot, and I think this team has probably been one of the most fun and connected groups I've ever been on. So we're all real close, and we cracking jokes all the time, and just to know that we have those kind of bonds and within our group, gives me confidence as well. Playing alongside them. So I think we've you know regardless of what the results say on the record or the standings, I think we've made some strides this season, and I think if we just continue to build on that, just time and experience will be very important for our group.
Coach has talked about leaning into your strengths as a young player, something you kind of have to do. Talk about how shooting is
Hmm.
something really niche that you picked up on in this league. How do you continue to balance out leaning on that strength, but then again working on being a two-way player and developing that part of your game?
Yeah, I think anytime like outside of the top 6 or 7 players in the league, when you say somebody's name, you immediately think of something. Um, whether it's like Dyson Daniels, you think about defense. You say, uh, you know, Trey Young shooting assists. Like there's, when you say somebody's name, you think of something. So I think for me, it's got to be, shooting the ball and having that constant thing for my game that just never dwindles. So, um, and then while you have that, you continue to work on that. But obviously, in the NBA, you're working on your game all day, every day. So there's no excuse not to be getting better at the other things. And for me, I'm kind of like a perfectionist. So I don't want to have any holes in my game, and I feel like continue to grow. I think this past month or month and a half, I've really been locked in on the defensive side of the ball, and I don't really look at the numbers, but I kind of just go off how I feel in the film. But I think I've made big strides, and this summer is going to be something I take very seriously. And going into next year to give us a chance to compete at the highest level and win as many games as possible. So, um, I think playmaking and all those other things are important as well. But for me, I think just keeping my shooting up and just being a defensive player as well.
Would Art go ahead?
Do you think that Will's a good coach?
Yeah, for sure. Will's one of the smartest coaches I ever had. I haven't had that many. Obviously, I've just been in the league for a couple years. But I can really tell, like, out of all the coaches I've had, he sees the game at a different level. Um, I think he kind of holds back his all of his what's the word I want to use? I don't want to use anger, but like he's not very like strict, in terms of yelling at us and stuff like that. Like he's not crazy just because I think we have a lot of young players and there's a lot of stuff we have to learn. But the stuff he says and the way he uses his words and like describes situations and stuff to us, I can really like tell that he sees the game at a high level and he always puts us in the right places. For us, it's just been connectivity, on the court and playing the right way and effort that I think is the determining factor for us. That has slipped for us a few times. So, but no, I think Will's an amazing coach, and I think he deserves a place at head coach in this league, for many years to come.
What has the organization told you about your growth, how they've talked about it over the last 2 years, and then what are your plans this summer?
They've just been telling me, like I said, like, my shot, they've been showing me, like, all the metrics and stuff, like the percentages and stuff like that, true shooting or three-point shooting percentage, and they really harped on that, just like, you got to be in the right place to get them up, and then once you catch the ball, like, if you don't shoot them, you're not going to make them. So just been really harping to me just to be that kind of piece, that is knocking down three-pointers. And then, late clock, if it comes down to a little ISO, then, that's what to do. That's what I should do. And then, obviously, if guys start running me off the line, then I can show my playmaking and stuff like that. But, yeah, just continue to play the right way and make the right decisions, quick decisions. And yeah, for the summer, I think I'll be here for majority of the time. I want to probably go back home to Orlando, see my friends, family, Dallas. But, I'm going to be, like last summer, I think it helped me a lot just because I was in here and I was, like, learning from the coaches and, I was really understanding, like, what they wanted from me. So, if I'm out somewhere else and I'm getting, like, individual work, it's nice and it's good to expand my game, but, like, to be in here and to hear it, like, from the source is helpful for me. So, I think I'll be here and just continue to build on, what I've done these past 2 years and keep molding myself into the player that these guys need.
You've had the opportunity to play a lot with the rookies.
Mm-hmm.
You being 1 year removed, what really stands out to you about the rookies and their commitment to growth?
Yeah, it's a completely different world. I think, from college to NBA is a huge transition. And I think, I obviously haven't seen it all, but the next biggest transitions for me has been year 1 to year 2. Just because, like, when you're a rookie, it's like, oh, he's young. He'll get it eventually. But, once that first season ends, then it really starts to become serious. Like, based on your performance in year 2 or, how you handle yourself in that first offseason, then now we're talking about, are they going to pick up your third year? Are they going to pick up your fourth year? So then I feel like after your rookie year, it really starts to get serious. So, and it's just not as many excuses made for you, for in your second year. But I feel like our rookies have done a great job. Obviously, Isaiah, like, breaking records and, staying constant, playing like 35 minutes a game, and having the role of a starting NBA point guard, like, that's not easy at all. And, there's been plenty of stories of young starting NBA point guards being, like, one of the worst players in the league or, stuff like that. So I think Isaiah's handled it really well. And, he's, I think he's found himself and found his groove and his confidence. And Kyle has really impressed me, bro. Like, I knew about him, obviously. I played against him at Duke our freshman years. But, man, he's a great player. Like, his skill level is crazy for his size. And, he shot the ball, like, really, really well. So, yeah, Kyle has really, like, gotten my attention. And I think Cody has done a great job, too, just, with everything he's gone through. just keeping a level head and you know, there's a lot asked of him, obviously as a lottery pick and a high pick and stuff like that. So, you know, I feel like, you know, just he's got to just keep improving and, you know, playing in the G League a little bit, something I did. I think he handled it really well, and, you know, he's obviously, like, his potential is, you know, what people always talk about. So as long as he keeps working hard, and he's eventually going to tap into that, and he's going to become a great player. So I think they've done a great job.
On the defense, rather, you mentioned wanting to be more of a two-way player, and you've been focusing on that in the last couple months. What do you actually do in the offseason to make yourself play better defense?
Yeah, you know, I'd say there's nothing like game reps, obviously, but you know, speed and agility is one. You know, like I said, like game reps to get your instincts up and, you know, your IQ and your knowledge, you know, defensive IQ. But you know, in the off season, you know, just, you know, bundle up a group of coaches and, you know, whether you're playing 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 5-on-5, or, you know, offense and defense, or just get a group of coaches and just play defense only, just so you can, you know, stay locked in on, you know, what the game looks like, and, you know, just being solid, you know, playing defense without fouling, and just little things like, you know, I feel like it's like, you know, it's like riding a bike. Like, once you learn and you get really good at it, like, it never goes away. So, yeah, just getting real reps and moving around, and obviously the weight room is a big part, like speed, agility, strength. So, you know, that'll be something I'll be really locked in on this summer.